It's like we're gonna.
Good evening, welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. Please join us in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, order of business is the approval of the minutes from the November 2nd meeting. Any questions or comments? Motion to approve this grant. Second. Mrs. Hogan.
Yes.
Mr. Evans. Yes. Mr. Snyder. Yes. Mr. Block.
Yeah.
And I vote yes. Now we'll open the meeting to public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the board on any active application, make use of that. Please come on up. You must be Mike.
Yes,
Mike, can you give her your name and address for the record?
sure. My name's Mike DeVero. I'm at 6032 Sneller Road. Okay, if I can get this. Yeah, the last page of that picture. I have a couple extra pictures of anybody. Probably the engineer, right? And the lawyer.
The clerk.
Yeah, what's going on? How you doing? So what I've handed out is, I'll read from the first page. The second page is the citations from the regulations. Chapter 208, solar energy systems. And the last page are just two pictures, one to give you a view from Mud Mill and one to give you a view from Sneller Road. Yeah. So, you know, as we all know, the planning board administers the zoning regulations. The regulations are created by the town board. And the town adopted very specific zoning regulations in chapter 2A, which relate to solar energy system. I'm not against the project. I'm not here to try to shut the project down. I know that's not your role either. What I'm here to do is to hopefully make sure that whatever plan is approved, it adheres to the zoning regulations. I just want to see it done right. In particular, I don't want to have the project have a negative visual impact on the area. The regulations contain specific requirements that are intended to protect against negative visual and environmental impact to the community and to adjacent and nearby property owners. It's the job of the planning board to approve development that meets the zoning regulations. Chapter 208 2E requires that solar projects are integrated in such a way as to minimize the visual impact on the community. There are neighboring properties that are residential and also properties that are zoned agricultural adjacent to the project. 208-8 requires the town board to permit tier 3 systems in such a manner so that no one area or neighborhood in the town is overburdened by the placement of tier 3 solar energy systems. As we know, there's a large solar energy farm on McKinley Road. So all the more reason to make sure the visual impact it is mitigated. Chapter 208-9 L1G requires that a landscape plan show all existing natural land, trees, and forest cover. The proposed site plan, to me, appears general with the existing landscaping. I would ask that a separate landscaping plan should be submitted and reviewed in conjunction with the site plan, landscape plan, prepared by a landscape architect. There are not any significant evergreens on the property, so the existing cover will not be adequate during the fall and winter. Chapter 208-9L18 requires a berm landscape screen or a combination to screen the site. The proposed site plan contains, from what I've seen, approximately 70 additional deciduous and evergreen trees that will be planted, new trees. I don't believe that's adequate coverage since the span of the solar field is almost 2,000 feet wide. So if they're staggered, typically they would be staggered diagonally, and there would be 2 rows. So that would equate to trees being approximately 50 to 60 feet apart. Also, a screen should be required on the back end of the property, and that is not in the proposed site plan. The trees are planted for the screen should be deer tolerant, wind resistant, good for the type of soil. It's wet, heavy clay. Again, a professional landscape architect can determine that. Chapter 208-9L1J requires simulations showing the elevation views. I wasn't at the previous report at the previous meeting, but the minutes from the previous meeting indicate simulations of views from Mudmill Road and Route 81, but did not include views from Sneller Road, which is the back end of the property. The project impacts the adjacent property owner to the south and views from Sneller Road, potentially, and that's what the simulation would show. Chapter 208-10F2A includes requirements for a visual assessment of the visual impact. Again, it's just a reiteration of what I stated previously in number 5. And chapter 208-10F2B contains detailed requirements for screening and landscape plans so that views of solar panels and equipment shall be minimized from public roadways and adjacent properties. This would include Sneller Road in addition to Mudmill Road. The screening all around the solar field should be enhanced to meet this requirement, and a separate landscape plan should be required and reviewed. Just the 2 pictures, again, not even close to what I'm sure can be done visually. Just to give you just a new one. The top picture is a view from Mudmill Road, where the vegetation is in the middle. That is about where that wetland area is, and I believe the solar farm is proposed to go in back of that. And you can see that it's very visual from Mudmill. I mean, I just took it this morning on my way to drop my granddaughter off to school from my car. So that's what that view is. The view from Sneller is on the bottom, and this is where, you know, I'm not saying, I'm not sure that the solar farm is going in that direction where I took this picture. Again, it's hard for me to determine that, but a simulation can determine it. I believe the solar farm is more to the left where those trees are, and there may be adequate coverage there on the property owner's property. But to the let me get this straight, on the east side, that's where the view could be impacted from Sneller. And again, I'm not sure. It may be fine the way it is, but again, I think we need to see that from a professional. And you can see from Sneller, you can see all the way across to Mudmill Road, those houses in that picture where I put Mudmill there. You can see those are houses on Mudmill Road. So you can, again, Sneller and Mudmill, you can see right through this time of year. I mean, in the summer you can. But the panels will be there all year round. So again, I'm not against the project. I just want to I just want to be sure that that a proper site plan review is done and that the visual impact is mitigated.
Thank you, I appreciate your time. Is there anybody else that would like to speak up?
How you doing? Dave Marty, I'm on 5980 Sneller Road. And I also have a concern with both that aspect of it. The visual aspect, as you talked about, you can see it very clearly from my backyard. That was supposed to be a screen so you couldn't see it. Some of the concerns I also have with the solar panels, the materials they use to make them. They have cadmium, which is a zinc mercury type metal. So in the long run, we're on well water. So I have a concern as far as that, as far as monitoring the environmental aspect of it. There's 3 dug wells. So as far as the dug well goes, how are we gonna monitor that? Because if I lose my well because of leaking chemicals from the solar panels. Plus we also have the wetlands and everything there with that. But that's my concern. If you guys are paying attention and looking at that, the aspects of it with the different metals, as far as future, what you're gonna do with them when they're done. I know you have them do a bond for decommissioning of them. And there's a reason for that, because they are environmentally hazard when they're done. So that's my concern. Good for your state having consideration.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the planning board? If nobody else is approaching, we'll close the public input. We'll move on to the first agenda item, which happens to be the solar farm that is being proposed on 1 Mill Road. Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. I appreciate that getting on the agenda early here. I got more else to be right after this.
Yes.
Well, kind of here too. I gotta go down the street. And I don't know what we were playing, but my name is Jim Palumbo, and I'm a principal landscape architect at Robert Hahn Hyatt. The last meeting with this project, the initial, our civil engineers, Steve D'Arcangelo was present, and he couldn't make it tonight, so I'm here to fill in. And keep this moving along and kind of give you an update of where we're at. We've received comments, and we've responded to them. We've resubmitted, and everybody I would hope has a copy of everything. If you don't, we have extra copies here. With me is Matt, he's in our office, and he's also familiar with the project. He's actually one that walked the site various times during the development of this, but one of the, just to keep this moving, I think you're familiar with the project. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I don't want to have to reiterate everything unless you feel I do. Just let me know if there's something that you want to expand on. But there was mention, I believe, of the arrangement of the solar panels that we're showing now is a little different than what we had prior. And I'll just explain that. So there was a fixed racking system that was on the initial submission. And if you look here, a fixed racking system is a system that's just basically it's facing south, the panel, and they run in east-west direction. The project did go forward, and we made a modification to a different arrangement. And this project is now going to, they're proposing to put in a single axis tracker system. So what that is these are panels that will track the sun. So they go in a north-south axis, so the orientation went 90 degrees. They will start in the east in the morning, and they will gradually go and turn. If you might have seen it or familiar with them, but the panel will turn with the sun. They'll end up in the west, and then over the evening they move back and start again in the east in the morning. Just to understand, it really didn't change the footprint of the project. This project was probably discussed at the last meeting. We have an adjacent area to the wetland that we're trying to avoid any impacts to. And that's really dictating the footprint of this project. What we got there is similar in the perimeter and the area of the array. And it's a 4.2 megawatt system right now, the way you see it there. And that's the alternating current. It's the AC that they're referring to it. So just wanted to say that what you see is a different arrangement, it's a different style solar array. We received comments from the town. The town engineer, I believe, gave us comments to address them. Everybody should have them. I don't know if you want to go down each one or if I could just generalize. I think we've addressed each comment. One of the comments that had one of the items that had multiple comments had to do with the stormwater pollution prevention plan, the SWIP. And that's an ongoing process. We've responded to that. And I don't think there's any issues there. One of the parts of those comments had to do with detailing. I believe there was a question about detailing the basins. And our comment was, we do that during the SWIP that we develop, does the hydrology study, takes a look at all the measures we need to take. And then as this project advances, we do two sections and detail that. That's a requirement in the end of the SWIP. So hopefully we've addressed the engineer's comments with regard to the stormwater measures. We do have two shallow basins on the site, and they're on the plan. They're shallow basins, and they meet the requirements, for that SWIP capture, mainly the captures of within the vicinity of the stone access drive, which is really for the DEC, the impervious portion of the project that we gauge that hydrology performance on. So I'll breeze through them real quick to make sure I cover all of them, but there was also, we just heard about some landscape concerns or landscape requests for visualization. I believe at the last meeting that was brought up, and we had resubmitted the drawings, and we are showing some screening on the project. And as that plan shows, we are putting a course of trees with a mix of evergreens and deciduous.
Mark, you have that? For the landscaping package.
Well, yeah,
Excuse
me. Here.
So I do have the board here. For the public to see, it's a little closer, but. So what we've got is prior to that hydrology course that goes through there, as you can see, we're proposing to put now understand a naturalized look. I am a landscape architect, and I appreciate the comments I heard, because I think we can contribute to developments like this. And our approach is to have native trees, which you see here. So we have 3 trees shown. We have hemlock, sugar maple, and then there's spruce trees, white spruce, I believe. And that's we're putting them not in a manner that might have been described a minute ago, where you alternate and do these lines of trees like soldier courses down the edge. The approach is to naturalize it, kind of mix in the deciduous with the evergreen, to really try to make it look conducive to the surrounding area and not like a wall of evergreen. And we find that you'll actually get a better effect that way when it comes to screening. So we're trying to tone down the visual impact, if you will. Is it going to block it? Absolutely 100%. Over time, the plants will mature and grow in. But it is a screening, and we hope to get good coverage of screening so that it's not that that visual impact that what you would see without it. It's kind of putting a little bit of screening in the front and blending the site in a natural way. Now there was comments from the south. I'll go back up to the top in a minute, but we can take a look at to the south. If we have to put screening, additional plantings down at the bottom, as was mentioned. that's something we'll go back and we'll take a look at and see what we can do there. And take a look at that visual concern that we just heard about. We did a visual assessment of the site. I will admit in the winter, it's a little different, back when you don't have the foliage on the trees. But I will say from the west, that's all pretty much blocked. When we were out there, there's nothing to show if you're looking at it from the road as a passerby would see on an 81. You just can't see it. We show some trees, existing, trees. It's really from Mud Mill. That is definitely where the site is visible. And then we'll take a look at the bottom to the south there.
You know approximately how far the panels are from Cicero?
We have, I'll have to take a look at the drawing to be specific, because I know we had arrangements, but I know we're well over the requirement. We have site data on the drawings, and we're well over the required distance.
Or you estimated on the.
I'm trying here. Doesn't seem to be quite. There we go.
So if I look at the setbacks, under the solar law, we break it out with the regular agriculture, the solar, and also with the divided. So along the frontage, we have 200.
I don't think the setback is the concern.
That's not what it's concerned. I just the visual effect.
I can't answer that off the top of my head, but
it's close to 2,500, almost 3,000 feet, 2,700 feet is what that's measuring. Right there
From Sneller to the first.
from Sneller, yeah, and that's probably a little conservative, because if you look at their site plan, their panels don't go up to the edge of the open areas.
right, there's a 100-foot buffer. You can guesstimate from the edge of that.
Even more than 100 feet.
So,
This is the 100-foot buffer here, I think, and you got wetlands, so I mean, probably a couple hundred feet more.
and I'm sure there's topography that comes into play as well.
3 and 4 football field.
Yeah. And I'm not sure where the houses are of the folks who spoke earlier. I mean, you do see one here. There's another one that appears to be over here. I'm not sure where the other houses are.
I will say that we do want to do the best we can to minimize impact, and I'm gonna take a look at this, and I'm already discussing with the team. We have a stockpile, oil stockpile as part of the project, and that comes with the decommissioning requirements. So we show that on the plan that you provided. You would see that right along the west property line near the end of the access road. And as a landscape architect, we're going to create an add-on here. I think we'd probably be looking at best utilizing that soil to incorporate with the vegetation to get that much of an effect. Now, I don't want to speak for hydrology. We can't impede natural hydrology forces. But I think we can look at that and try to maybe find that it's better suited to put the soil, at the back of the site. And then also incorporate some planting on there to do the best we can there. So I'll bring that back to the team and we'll respond to that. Appreciate that. Yeah. As far as the landscaping, the last part of that is we did add some visually blocking vegetation along the north corner of the uppermost part where the equipment poles are going out to the road. And so there, right? Yeah, it's up top on there. And our visualizations that we provided give an indication of that. Now, it's on the south side of that we're proposing that. We don't have them on the opposite side of the drive there. Looking at when you're coming down, what that would do. We're trying to keep those poles as open as you can. That's what we feel is going to want, and we don't want to have fall hazards. We try to minimize that. So it's tough to put trees, near the infrastructure like that. So what we're showing here is, coming from the south, from heading north, you would have a vegetative screen there. Understand this too, and you can see it in the visualization we showed. a lot of times when you have a backdrop of vegetation, we might not be blocking the view of the poles, but they offer a backdrop that softens that stark view of poles standing on the ground. So coming from the north, that's our consideration, is that when you've got the vegetation, you know, to the south of that access drive, they're a nice backdrop to the pole. And all the branching and everything of the trees kind of camouflages, if you will, the appearance of the poles. So that's what we provided here. So that's the screening. There was another comment or follow-up that I wanted to get into was the actual access to curb cut itself. And I don't know if our team submitted a letter. Yeah, I have a letter here to submit if necessary, but an email correspondence.
We do have that.
If you do have that.
Yes.
So we are in dialogue with the county DOT, and they do not appear to have an issue with what we're proposing here from a conceptual standpoint, and they make it clear that we didn't have to meet all the requirements doing it. So I think that we've got that underway. Just for an understanding for this board to know that that's not going to be an obstacle we can't achieve. I will mention that we're currently in the process, as you see, we're crossing a hydrology course. I don't know how much they discussed this at the last meeting, but we do have an environmental scientist on board, and we did wetland delineations and all that, and we are looking to cross designate or an existing wetland, and also working within the adjacent area. So there has been I believe it's a process that they got to take step by step, and there has been possibly reviews and dialogue in-house at least with these requirements and what it's going to take. And one of the things that we're up against with that is we're going to need a permit for water quality cert, and that's with the DEC, and they require a secret determination, you know, as part of that process. So you've been there before, I'm sure, with projects, and they want this, but you know, we can't get it until this. So eventually, right now, that's still in motion, and we're also waiting for that process to play out so that we can get a directive from the DEC on the hydrology or requirements for if we bridge it or we do culverts, what year storm the design needs to be to. We believe it's going to be like we've experienced in the past, a 50-year storm. But all that's got to come into play. So that's still in motion. And it is something that we're going to be doing. And with regard to this site from an environmental standpoint, there's the wetlands, which we've done our best to avoid except for this crossing. Then there was also, and Mark, I don't know if this is something that you are aware of or have, but there was also a SHPO response of some sort. I believe it was with our environmental scientist, which is Delta. And that response basically informed the project that they're going to require a archaeological study. And they spelled it out. That's being pursued right now with the project to engage. I believe the first step is a phase 1A, and then that leads into what we need to do for a 1B. So the thing with that is, I don't know if it's the whole site has to be reviewed. That's what the phase 1A will determine. You know, where the phase with the field work with 1B, where that has to happen. But that's something that's being developed. And I'm sure that's going to hold the CEQA process up. So I just want to make mention of that. They're engaging that aspect of the project. So, but you said you do have correspondence on that, or you're familiar with it? I'll follow up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have seen it
But
actually.
you're aware of it.
I know you need to go through the process, but yeah.
So I bring it up because I want to make sure we get it in this board's hands. It was just recently that this development came up, and so we're aware of that in case that comes up. That's pretty much it. I think I've covered pretty much all the aspects of what we're coming to today with regard to since the last meeting and reactive stuff that we've done on our parts.
Mark, you want to, I'll go to you first because there's a lot of things on your list that
Sure.
you want to go over before I go to the board.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess those things they have addressed, we had a couple outstanding items noted in the letter. They have provided the information from the county DOT indicating the entrance is acceptable. They do also have the quantity, size, and species of the landscaping that they're providing, notwithstanding the comments that have been received tonight about that. Relative to the stormwater, I guess the short answer is ultimately we'll have to sign off on the SWIP and provide an MS4 acceptance form. So rather than get into the details of that, I'll just say that it will be resolved to our satisfaction, the town's satisfaction, prior to being able to get the permit for the stormwater. So I do have some concerns about it still, but again, those will be resolved before the project. It ends. Well, maybe not even at the town board level, because again, if they have to work, but they can't get the SWIP without the town sign off. Okay. And this again, so this is the first time we've gone through this as a tier 3 with the new regulations. So the planning board's role in this really is to, the way the code is to make a report to the town board, and then the town board ultimately has a public hearing and issues a special use permit, I believe, for the project. So the board has a couple options here. I think you could ask them for additional information if you're not satisfied with what you see tonight, or you could, I would suggest possibly using our letter as the basis for the report from the planning board to the town board, and adding on any additional conditions you might have, such as providing additional view sheds from Sneller Road. If you feel there's a need for additional landscaping or something like that, adding that in. So that's the other option that you have. And so you'd forward your report to the town board. That would get it out of the planning board's part of the process, and move it on to the town board with whatever recommendations you want to put into the report. So I'll leave it up to you to decide how you choose to would like to go forward.
I'll open up to the board now and see what questions the board has.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you going back and considering adding in all this extra landscaping and taking our concern. I also like that you took my suggestion of native trees, so I appreciate that very much. I was one of the ones that was concerned about what it looked like from both of the roads, so I appreciate you doing that. Although if the gentleman who was here this evening, if his calculations are correct, I think that we could do better and do more. So I appreciate that you said that you're going to take that back to your team, because if it is 60 feet apart from each tree, I think that we could do better in terms of the screening and the visual. I also think that there's not that many houses that I think that we could get a picture from each of their backyards to see exactly how that's hindering them in the screening. Whether it's from Sneller Road, it's hard to see from this high up to see exactly what their visual is going to be. And I agree with them that I wouldn't want my backyard turning into this type of visual. I would be very upset as well. So maybe we could do some kind of picture from these affected houses and see what it is that they're seeing as well, and not just the preview.
In our experience doing this, that's fine, we would consider doing that, but sometimes we get resistance, so we're allowed to go do that. So
Okay.
we'll do our best. I'll bring that back and we'll take a look. A lot of times they're quite willing to offer it, because
Okay.
it's to their
Yeah, I think it'd be
benefit.
something that we could consider, just so that we can understand it better. The other thing is that in your last picture where you have, where you can really see the poles and you added in the trees to kind of create it less obvious so that you're not looking at the poles. Is there a reason, and maybe this is a zoning question, that we can't bring more trees closer to the road as well, kind of like how it is across the street. So I'm looking at this picture right here.
Yeah, we have to review that honestly with the DOT, because they really try to steer us away from anything, you know, within the right of way. That might be a visual impact.
Okay.
to Safety.
Okay, yeah,
There's an existing overhead utility line that runs from the corner of across the field on the north edge.
okay,
Crosses that and goes down all the way almost to the driveway entrance.
okay.
We'll take a look at that though.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question I had was, the comment that was brought up about the materials that are used to make them environmentally safe. That isn't something that I, know a lot about, so if you could just kind of go through that with me and touch on that, like what they're made of and.
I'm not gonna act like I'm an expert in that,
Okay.
and Dave Byrne, if he was here, you might have met him last meeting. He would speak to the effect, I've done projects and I've heard this enough. But they come a long way with what, you know, you go on the internet today and it's not always accurate to current things that are out there. These panels have changed in chemistry of the film that's in them, what they use for the materials. They're really going for being environmentally sensitive. But I will say this, the DEC would not allow solar arrays if there was any concern or chance for an environmental hazard in the way of leaching. These are encapsulated, the film is really the only thing, my understanding, within the panels. And they're encapsulated in glass and metal. If a tree fell on a solar panel, it's not as if all of a sudden the air is full of this toxic chemical or anything like that, or rain or snow is gonna leach into the ground. These projects, when a panel is damaged, they fix them immediately. They do not want to be losing solar harvest. They monitor these systems, and I'm just speaking from a general sense. I would like for that to be followed up with at the next meeting or when I would Dave that question, and I'll mention to him. But just to reassure you that these solar projects are something that's, you know, hidden all over the state. And the DEC, we've had discussions with them and in the past, and they said that exactly, you're right. You know, I'm sure they're looking at these, and right now, there's nothing that they would put their finger on saying that there's any kind of concern with that, or else they would take measures and put regulations. You know, regulations, you've got regulations on almost everything. So from a leaching into water or wells, or even just going leaching into a wetland, that's not a concern of ours. Us as designers, we're responsible for making sure that doesn't happen. That's our obligation. So there's that assurance, but you may have concerns with projects. You've heard of the energy storage systems, batteries. And I'm not familiar with anything like that on this project that I'm aware of. That's one that I've heard in the past that the jury's out on.
And this isn't the first project that you guys have done.
Absolutely not.
That's right. So it would help us feel a little bit more comfortable too, if you could just show proof from the previous projects that you've done in terms of some longevity of it, or that there hasn't been an issue.
I'm not sure what proof. It's not like we go out and do studies on these projects. We've been doing this within the last 5 years on different projects. I don't know if I can. I'll bring that back to the team and we'll mention that. Maybe they can just have a little more reassuring follow-up explanation on that.
Okay.
But I can't put my finger on any studies that the projects have done. Maybe they have some. I don't know.
Thank you.
So, one last thing to address your comment on the plantings. We've had a little bit of dialogue and the landscape architect. I'm also looking to, in a feasible way, incorporate some lower shrubs within the tree plant. You know, we have evergreens that are pyramidal, we have ones that are broad, so you get all the different shapes, but something like a native viburnum or something like that, we're thinking it'd be nice for that naturalizing effect.
In between the trees that you already have.
But it's some smaller stuff that might get, you know, 6 to 8 feet tall, but it just kind of naturalizes out a hedgerow rather than a deliberate planting. It helps tone down the impact. It's a subliminal thing.
I think that sounds great.
Yes, we're always interested in, developing a renewable energy areas. And as long as it's done properly and follow all the rules, that's great. You mentioned batteries, looking at the top part there, it says it shows two equipment pads. Those are not for batteries?
No, so that would be your switchgear panels and your transformer. That's what takes the DC, which is direct current, and turns it into alternating current to put into the grid. So what leaves the site is, that's what the equipment poles do, they regulate, how much they can put into the grid. But those are transformers and equipment in a way of converting that power, not in a way of energy storage.
Some developments do have battery storage.
Right. I can honestly say I'm not familiar. I don't want to speak 100%, but nothing's been brought to my attention as a project I'm very familiar with. I see what our civil engineers been working on.
I believe they said the last meeting, there were no batteries up with stuff.
Yeah, this particular Yalehead, this particular solar owner, I haven't had any experience with them using that technology.
Are we still talking 25, 30 year longevity?
I believe that's the case, yes. There's a range of point for the serviceable life.
So at that point, at this point, it would be, removed and put back the way the land was.
Right, so the stockpile that I spoke of, part of decommissioning, especially with agricultural land. We are obligated to put the site back with the initial, its original condition. One thing I will say is, I can honestly say we'll put the site back better than it is now. And the reason being is this will have a meadow mix, vegetation beneath it, that is going to be cut and left. And it relaxes the soils over 25 years and it rejuvenates. This is something people don't understand about the solar. Some benefits come out of it. The nutrients go back in the soil. You get all the benefits of pollinators and all that and wildlife, but the soils actually get relaxed from the cash crop type of activity gets now, where you're taking corn or soy or you're taking that away, you're depleting the soils. So in that sense, we're putting it back better, but the stockpile is intended that is a resource of the soil that are on the site now. We don't want to bring in import soils. Soils are really important. So keep the soils out of the matrix of that existing site now. And during decommissioning, they would remove the stone access drive, which is a box out of about a foot, with fabric and stone. That would be removed from the site. And that stockpile is the soil that was there. That gets placed back into there to bring it to its existing state upon the decommission.
This type of vegetation would have to be maintained or mowed.
Right, so what we try to do as a landscape architect, I try to get something in there that's gonna be beneficial in many ways. I talked about it's great for upland birds and bees and pollinators. But we're going with a mix that would be, maintenance is a big part of these projects. And we wanna we're going with a mix that they would cut in early spring to mid-spring, we do an initial cutting. And we work with Ernst Seeds, and there's a pollinator mix for solar arrays that they provide. And what that is different things come up through the season. The clover's gonna come up right away and get that after the dismal winter. You're gonna get that clover popping up, and then after that you may have black-eyed Susan or brown-eyed Susan daisies come up. There's a whole mix. There's a matrix of plants. These require basically one cutting. And the plants we chose will not get taller than 3 to 3.5 feet. They'll get matted down in the winter. And then they'll get cut again in the spring, just to get that initial cutting, not taking the material away, just laying it down. And letting it grow back. And by doing one cutting, we're allowing those different types of plants to come out through the season. You might have different plants, and you might have oats during the summer and something else in the September. So it's a constant changing of the plants, the mix that we chose.
So I appreciate your expertise in landscape architect, which obviously
I hope we can, these are a hot topic today, and in my profession, I'm in the profession to try to do the best I can. We have a built environment, we need that, we're human, we have built environments. And, that's a selling point for me, is that we try to contribute to it, to make it as best as we can.
We appreciate that very much. Thank you. Mr. Stein. I think in an answer to Mr. Pardee's concern, I would think the vendors of the panels would be willing to make a statement that there is nothing that will be leached from the panels for the life of the panels. And I know that if I were him and I all of a sudden did have a well problem, and I had a vendor that said, my product doesn't leach, I think then there is some responsibility by that contractor to possibly fix the situation that the panels caused. So I would hope we would get a guarantee basically that the panels will not leach anything into the soil that will cause specifically any problem with the wells in the neighborhood.
So if I could just touch on that, and I don't want to misspeak, I'm gonna let at the next meeting, the ones that know best on it, because I'm a landscape architect, I'm not a solar designer. But I do know that I've heard enough on our projects and the reality of these projects, because I get the changes later on when we do construction documents. These panels, the technology changes monthly. And when I started this, we were getting panels that had a capacity of, 360 watts. And now they're up to, you get them, I'm hearing 590 now. I mean, the efficiency is incredible. The makeup of them is different now. It's changing all the time. These projects, that nailing down who the vendor is going to be is not something I think that can be nailed down right now, because these take, so this project's not going to be built in February. Let's just put it that way. It most likely will be the summer season if everything went well, got our permits and all that. And then you got the utility that has to do all their approvals and sign off. Time goes by, and when it's closer to submitting our permit drawings, that's when they nail that down. But to your point, I think we're going to bring that back and be prepared to give you some examples from different vendors, maybe, or information that would help satisfy that concern, to relieve that concern. Because it is a legitimate concern. We're not saying it's
The
not.
other thing I heard the public talk about is we do not show any screening effect on the south side, so people on Sneller. I don't know, well, if where the array was going to go, if we had the ability of putting a 4x8 sheet of plywood that was painted black, that would be about where the closest panel would be to the people on Cellar Road and at the proper height, we could tell whether our concern is real, or we gotta have 20/20 eyesight before it really starts to impact me on my vision. Very hard. I mean, we go by the situation on either one of the systems we have in the town now, and all we can see is this big black array of panels, and we're right next to it. So we don't know if we are 2,000 or 3,000 feet from it. We don't know what that will look like. And I think since it's going to be here for 20 or 30 years, we ought to try and make sure the people that right now would be possibly impacted by that visual effect, that we do whatever we can do to minimize that.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to look at that and try to respond and demonstrate that. We've done stuff like that in the past. What you find is, it may be that, we go out with a target and we have a big yellow board and then we simulate. So we're not playing tricks with the simulation. There's the board in the existing field, and then we show it, graphically, if you would. When it gets into constructing, a large piece of plywood or something, and you're dealing with wind, and you gotta get out there, We'll take a look at the best we can do, but we're gonna be honest in what we could pick and show. I've done it with balloons, you know, at a certain height, if it's greater than a height that you can do a piece of plywood. You know, we may do that, but we'll take a look at that and try to bring that back.
You need to do it in a way that the people that are making that decision, not only the board, but will have input from the neighbors. That we are satisfied that what we're looking at is what we might see if the array were to be built.
Right, and the other thing, remember with the trackers, one of the nice things about the trackers, in my opinion, is they're changing. So you'll have at full tilt, you'll have that, the biggest impact, you're seeing the black panel, it's looking head on it. In the afternoon, if you're looking from the east, you'll see the black panel. In the afternoon, you're gonna see the backside, so it changes, it's not as visible. 12 o'clock, middle of the day, that's when the panel's the lowest, because it doesn't have the full height. And they actually almost disappear, depending on the angle you're looking at them. So there's a point in the middle of the day that they're actually least visible. It's that morning and evening.
I think the current visuals that we provided, those are about 300 feet away from the panels. And it shows that they're pretty much a filtered view to them. You know, you're not gonna see the whole panel. And Smeller Road, we're talking about 3,000. So
We'll take a look.
absolutely, yeah. I agree.
Show that. Yeah, that was done when there was vegetation on the trees. It'll be interesting to see, you know, now without vegetation, but it is what it is. We're gonna demonstrate that.
I've got a question on, have you done any studies, impact on the wildlife? I'm real familiar with the whole site area. I am a resident of Mud Mill Road. And drive by here on a daily basis. The deer, the wildlife, I have, trail cams and I see foxes and coyotes and just a lot of different, raccoons. And to me, that means a lot. I love having the animals around. Now, what is the impact going to be, especially if you look, if you're looking from Mud Mill, kind of west southwest, where those, you know, where the old farmhouse is, Harder's, that farmhouse.
I'm not familiar with the name.
Well, that's the oldest building right there. It's a couple past. Looking at your screen up there, okay. From that down towards the bottom of the screen.
You know, the Mud Mill
Yeah,
text.
well, anyways, that the farm, his farm is right in there. Okay, the white dot, I think is his. Anybody else out here that lives there? No, that's okay. Anyways, you see the deer feed in there all the time and everything, and especially the crop farmers that go in there and plant different things every year and they harvest them. What impact is that gonna have on
So
the wildlife?
we have a fence in detail in here that it's referred to as a wildlife friendly fence now. That means the bottom doesn't go right to the ground. What does that help? Well, you've got turtles who circumvent, you know, right across that field like they always did.
I never got my own yard.
What's that?
They come right out of the swamp, they come right to the turtles.
Yeah, so we go with a wildlife friendly fence for that reason. I'm a landscape architect, like I said, I'm an advocate of you know, the outdoors and I enjoy wildlife. There's a huge benefit to these. So when I talked about pollinators, you know, we go with the meadow mix. We could go with the grass that they cut 3 or 4 times a year. This project's not doing that. A lot of them now are catching on. So let's help the pollinator situation. But the thing about pollinators, not just the pollinators, it's insects in general. When you talk about wildlife, if it's a rough grouse, if it's there's all kinds of wildlife that'll feed on insects, turkeys, for example. We've now created, and it's been demonstrated to go both ways. It's good for birds of prey, and it's good for roosting or upland birds that are nesting. So you take a turkey can go in there and nest. A fox might be able to get under that fence, but a coyote might be a little more difficult, maybe a young coyote. That's nature. They're going to do what they do, but we've provided these conditions for them that are better than a farmer coming in and haying the field where they're nesting. And that's the problem today with a lot of our upland birds. They're having a hard time. Used to have pheasant all over the place, but practice has changed with agriculture. And we're haying in early May rather than like June, after the birds have hatched or whatever. But those insects, going back to that, that's an incredible food source when that clover takes off. For those young birds, the small grouse, the little chicken, they get in there, it's cover for them. They're hidden from, prey, and they got all the insects at their disposal. There's dew that they can get right off of that vegetation. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate things, but you get the point. There's a lot that goes on there. And then you have the birds of prey. We've actually seen where there's hawks right on that fence, and there's rabbits, like you wouldn't believe, under these. And the fox and the hawks do really well because we've almost created a little, farm of those small mammals, for them to be protected. They're protected by the solar panel. They're like a little roof over them, so they're not they thrive. They got everything underneath. And with these panels rotating, you're gonna get a nice thick flush meadow, because the sunlight's getting to them. It's not like they're always shaded in one direction. That's what I like about the trackers. But a mature deer is not gonna leap this fence. Small deer, unless it's a real young fawn, have a hard time crawling underneath it, but we've had, that happen. I've heard, from others that have seen it with their own eyes, get away from a coyote or something. So it's, there's a lot of benefits that we don't realize until these happen. There's more wildlife benefit to that field with the solar array than it is right now. Right now, it's good for earthworms in March for the robins, because it's all dirt, and that's about it. But when you've got winter cover, that helps a lot of, again, we don't knock that vegetation down until the spring for a reason, habitat. Around, the arrays and the strings and the posts, you'll get your higher grasses around the post till they come in and cut it all down. And, a lot of that holds up the weather and the snow, and it'll bend over and make a little pocket for them to be in if you're a pheasant or something. So I don't know if I need to say much more if that answers your question, but that's what we get out of these.
One temporary, you showed a temporary pad. Will that revert back to agriculture when the project's done?
The laydown area?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a temporary laydown area. What that is it's not even a disturbed area technically, meaning we're not disturbing the soil. They put a fabric down. They'll put a foot of stone down. It distributes the load to it with compaction and whatnot. It's going to be there for the duration of the construction. As soon as construction's over, it's removed and taken off site. It's type of stone, they may dress the road with it, rather than go through there hauling it off, wait until 30 years from now, haul it off. But yes, that'll be removed, so that'll be available field area in the front here.
Thank you, Don. So pretty much everything's been covered, but to say like the well water issue and concern with that. I hear that can't really do, it has one in my head, when I hear that. So anything you can help alleviate that concern would be terrific. I also go back to a time we got a couple years ago, we went over to residents' house on Island Road, and they were having a solar farm being built behind them. And we talked about some, putting up some fencing and some landscaping. But there was also discussion about how other development could be much more intrusive, right? Apartment complex, that kind of thing, relative to visual impact and traffic. So there are some benefits to this. As long as we can get the coverage that we're looking for, with landscaping, get more comfortable with the potential environmental concerns. I'm hoping it's fine, right? As you said, they wouldn't be allowed if they were going to be, I would assume, putting out some kind of poisonous into the ground. But so
I'd be very concerned if there was a concern, trust me, because my name is on this project, and my reputation, so.
it would be good to get some more information as we move forward. Steve, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Robert?
No, sir.
Mark, anything?
No.
So I think I would like them to come back in front of us Bring your own, send it to the board now.
Can I just get an idea? I might not be here at the next meeting. Steve Darkandle, the civil engineer, that's the project manager in our office on this. And Dave Burns, New Energy. I don't fully understand the process. I know we were here for an initial meeting. I know you don't do sketch plans. We were here once, I believe, the initial public hearing, the first meeting. We're here to the follow-up. Were we here a couple times?
No, let me,
Okay, not a public hearing. but-
Yeah, it's- yeah, and the first meeting really was a sketch.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I just want to handle it as I deal with this project and management of it. So the process is such, and I'm just asking every town to recommend, and I apologize if this was already asked about project. The process is such, we're here tonight. We've answered some initial comments from our initial presentation. And then where does this go from here? I understand there's also a process with the town board, special use permit. Is there referral action by this board? And I know speakers down the road, we talked about things that have to come into play for that, but could you just kind of give me a?
Yeah, so the next step will be coming back in front of this board with some of the revisions that we talked about tonight. Discussion about the environmental concern. And then at that point, we send it to the town board. Right?
Yes, you make a report to the town board. So, yeah, and with, again, your recommendations on the project. And your report on the project. And then the town board will hold a public hearing. Where again, a lot of the comments and concerns that were brought up tonight could again be brought up for the town board. And then after the public hearing, there's the issuance or approval of the project and the issuance of a special use permit.
So potentially one more meeting here, 2 meetings at the town.
And then does it come back here for site plan approval?
No,
That's all covered by that process. And I'm gonna tell you, I just, what's that?
This is new for us as well.
I've been in towns where the town board and the planning board had nothing to do with it. It was all about the CBA. I don't know how that works. But I would name the town and that's how they did it. They gave the powers to their zoning board for these, because I think it had to do with special use permits and whatever their solar law was designed to be, but I asked because I just want to make sure it's different everywhere we go. And that really helps clarify and I'll bring that back to everybody. Give us a time frame. We have a lot of things that have to play out, as we mentioned in here. With some of the wetlands and whatnot. Okay.
Wonderful. What time's your meeting?
I could be a little late. I told the chair I was going a little late. Question I have is, can I take action? Can I show up late and vote on something?
Sure.
That's why we have an attorney there, right? Yeah. All right, I'm all set. I want to thank you again so much for allowing me to get on your road here. And I look forward to hearing that good thing about the next meeting. So, thank you.
Next item on your agenda is.
Man, what is your last name? How do you spell that?
Good evening.
Opposite of what you were talking about, the solar panel.
I've got it. But there are things that need to be discussed. Yeah.
Ever come up before?
Probably not heard of, but.
Sorry about that. You good?
Yeah, go ahead. So Tim Boyer, I use in Romans, this map that I just gave you basically exactly what you already had. Minus there was some old wetlands I had shown on the one that I submitted that I took off in 1992, so I just got rid of that. That was just an error on my part. From the last meeting, we made some changes to the map and brought it back. Specifically, we made sure that we met all the parking requirements. We have now 192 open parking spots shown on the map with roughly 80 garage spaces on the map. So basically what I did is we got rid of a few of the garage spaces and added in the open parking spaces so that we met the 2 spaces per unit for the apartments. I added basically a large note here that kind of runs down my lasers now, looking very good. But this kind of runs down all the important notes that we had and have for the plan. There you go. So total acres of the site is 0.2 acres. The total wetland acreage is 4.5 acres, which allows us, per the code, 140 acres or 40 units to be allowed on the site. That's per the current code with the 5,445 square feet per unit. So that was asked at the last meeting. They wanted me to verify versus the new wetland delineation. So I went back and did that. So 140 technically would be allowed. We're showing 120 per New York State DOT that is allowing us with the full access. Again, 1 and 2, we have the apartments in phases 1 and 2, and I broke down the phases for us on this map so you can see that the southwesterly apartments are phase 1, the easterly apartments are phase 2, and the single family is phase 3. I added some possible landscape areas again. When we move forward with the actual contract drawing, we're gonna have to detail these landscape areas and show them in more detail, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And finally, I do have copies of Maple Bay. There were some questions by Neil and Margaret regarding how the single family and the subdivision and all that would go. If you guys want, I can show you how Maple Bay was done with the carved out box parcels, but I did send that to Mark and Neil, and we're gonna work through that on the next part of the phase. I don't want to speak for Mark or anybody, but if that's a concern, we can talk about it tonight as well.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's a way to work it out, I mean, there might need to be a homeowners association. You know, and then again, so it's been done before, so that leads me to believe it can be done again. So I think, at least at the stage we're in right now, I think we're good with that as long as the board understands what the intent is.
That has to do with the private road.
It's the roads and the fact that what they want to do on these single family units in this portion of the project, phase 3. What the intent is they would be putting a box around each piece or each unit, and that would be a parcel owned by the person who owns the home, but they don't own anything else around it. Yeah, it's common area. And then what that ends up being is it's got to have a whole bunch of things associated with that, because it's got to have access to a public highway, et cetera, et cetera. So that's done through a homeowners association. So it's not just the roads, it's the grounds, it's the infrastructure, basically everything within this project would be private. I guess the only issue we would have is sewers would have to be public, because sewers can't serve more than one property at a time. Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of reiterating what Mark was saying, that map that I just handed you is the existing Maple Bay project that is a PUD, just like what we're trying to do here. The yellow and the red, I tried to separate them to show them a little bit better. But those are the individual lots that we're going to create around the townhouse and or single family house that will be owned in fee. Like, you will own that square. The people that own the house will own that square. Around it, you'll see that we don't technically have road frontage like a traditional subdivision. Around us will be HOA properties. And if you look at the map, it's got a whole bunch of notes on the right hand side regarding like the HOAs responsible for the roads and keeping up with the utilities. And also just want to point out that yes, we're gonna have to do a public easement around the sewer, and that this map also shows a public easement going around the sewer. But a lot of the infrastructure and stuff is gonna be controlled by the HOA, which we're gonna have to put together and with an attorney, and it's gonna have to be reviewed by the board's attorney to make sure that everything's covered and taken care of as far as the legalities of that go. But I just want to bring this to kind of give you a better idea of what we were thinking, what I was talking about the last meeting, as far as how we're going to do the subdivision portion.
And that won't change if you decide to have single family residence versus
No,
something else.
no.
You gotta think of it as you own that piece of property. If we do a single family house, you will still have a square box that you own around your house, surrounded by HOA.
Who owns the land?
HOA. The HOA owns the land.
Did you have anything else with your presentation?
I don't think so. I think I covered everything that was brought up at the last meeting. And again, this is just the preliminary concept phase of this project. All we're kind of looking to do is move into the actual contract and train our engineers to use. We still got to get wetland permitting, and we got to do a lot of work before anything actually officially gets done. But we just want to get that ball rolling with this submittal.
Well, any questions, Mr. Paul?
So what exactly are we trying to get approved this evening?
This is nothing in the.
Presenting this to give us a chance to have comments
So,
about this part.
and Steve will kind of hopefully go through it. This is kind of a process with the PUD. So right now we're at the preliminary concept phase. Once the board's generally okay with the concept of what we're trying to do with the project, then we're gonna into more detail, like architectural, engineering, SWIPs, DEC or not DEC, Army Corps permits. When we get into the nitty gritty of it, but we don't want to spend that money and spend that time in the beginning unless the board's okay with what we're proposing.
In regards to the HOA, so is it a different HOA amount depending on how much you own? Or what part of this you own? How is that gonna vary? Because all of these residents are gonna have an HOA fee, correct?
That I believe, so I can't speak exactly to how the HOA will be set up. If you'd like, we can get more documentation on
Yes,
that.
I think that we would need more documentation and more understanding of how you would want that.
Which we have to do no matter what. And again, are you asking that we have that documentation before we allow to move forward with the next part of this? Or are you comfortable with what we're doing here?
I think that that's something that we all should probably, right? I mean,
We don't need to move forward.
okay,
Normally, you don't have it to move forward into the contract or anything, but we have to do it. That
Yeah.
we legally have to do.
okay, that's it for me.
Mr. Evans?
And just had one question.
Yes, sir.
On the entrance from 31 coming in.
Now, can you stop in there, Michael? We have two sub roads.
Yep. Right here.
No, just big about.
So, and this was part of on some of our very initial meetings with this. So potentially, we can have cross access with these commercial properties out front. They can eventually tie into this full access. We were just showing that, again, this doesn't have to be exactly right here. It can slide, but the idea was to put it in the back of the properties. That was something also that was part of the New York State's, the DOT's comments to allow cross access in there. Or at least the availability for these properties to eventually tie into this access.
And the entrance there about the right in, right out, we talked about one time.
That this is a full access, we're a full
Access.
access. Yeah,
Will there be a light there? Is that necessary?
not at this time, no.
Okay. That's all for now. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder? I think the only thing that I was thinking about when we said the entrance road would probably be public. And about where you make the left-hand turn to go to the phase one apartments, that would be where
All private.
all private, right from the first, from the entrance. Okay, then I don't care what turnaround for plows.
Okay.
No, I think it's great. I think whatever we can do. I think the fact that you're doing the apartment phase one first, I think that's good because it also builds in some automatic time for what's going to happen with Micron. And you'd be able to decide whether the market is going one way or the other. So I think that's good. I mean, would you ever come back to us and say that maybe phase two would be not apartments, but would you recommend and ask permission to put houses in there?
So,
And we got the 120 units that we can do.
correct. So I don't want to say no, never, yeah, but if we ever had to, we would have to kind of come back and redo a lot of this stuff. So we'd have to come back and redo our preliminary concept plan, we'd have to redo our approved concept plan. It'd be a very big process to do that because of the PUD rules. So if it ever was something that we would entertain, it would be something that would take a process. It's not something that can be done easily. Let's just put it that way.
I'm just wondering with Micron coming.
Yeah.
Now, I may not see it because we probably won't see, they're not gonna start building for 2 years. But I guess with Micron coming, should you rethink phase 2 because of its location to Micron? Because I doubt if a lot of the Micron people, if they're making 100 grand or more, are not gonna wanna live in an apartment.
So potentially, we could, we get phase 1, exactly kind of what it is. We get phase 1 going, something stirs the developer and they think, oh, we should just do single family or duplexes the entire way. Yeah, but again, I just want to reiterate, it's not an easy thing to do. It's something that has to come back to this board, back to the town board and, at contract rights, that's what we do it now.
You're gonna end up with a lot less units though, too.
You're gonna get run up a lot less unit, but at the same time, it's something that you don't want to do all the engineering and all the design work for 2 options, I guess would be.
Right.
We probably wouldn't do that, I guess is what I'm saying. If it happens, great, but that'd be something that we could address at that time.
My understanding is the Micron project is gonna set up demand for both apartment and single family.
So, I mean, just to be honest, you're seeing a lot of young professionals want apartments versus single family. We're seeing that trend now, so we actually see a lot more apartments being required or wanted than single families.
And the last thing that I had is. Granted, we have an emergency exit, but that's when we're gonna have an accident out here in the front, we're trying to bring the firefighters in. We have land. I wish there was a way that we could get a second access out of this property or into this property. Obviously, the easiest would be to try to get something through the VFW property, so that it comes out to traffic light, everything is neat. Because even though we have a full access approval for that exit entrance right now, if we're 4 lanes wide, and if the traffic gets to be what I'm afraid it might get to be, we're all gonna wish we had another way out of there.
No, I don't disagree. Again, that's one of the big reasons why we got the emergency access to we have to be in there time enough to allow us to have that. And I can tell you that Mr. Astrino has exhausted trying to get extra egress and egress through this property. For almost 2 years, I think he was trying to address that exact question and concern. Right now, it's not necessarily an option, but it's something we can keep keep open to.
Okay, Mr. Bloss, I'm all set. Tim, the 140 units that would be allowed in that space on RM.
But it's based on the RM, so per the code, it's I think 5445 square feet per acre. Yeah, 1 unit for the square footage of that. So technically, you could fit 140, but the state DOT will not allow us full access over the 120. So that's why we're showing like this.
Do you have a feel for the time frame with the pages?
Any feel for the time frame? My question's coming. As soon as possible. But we have a lot of work, like I already said, we have a lot of work to do before we come back to this board with our more detailed information, but we're gonna go as fast as we can.
To follow up with Chairman's question, so I think initially indicated at point you wanted to get the PUD and the development plan on all uses and come back for subject to basically think we'll get all the phases to the design approval for the clarity and construct everything in 5 years.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. I don't want to speak out of turn.
It expired, right? Right. Definition.
Oh, the expired, right. But we're gonna try and do the whole thing, yes, within 5 years.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Goodman.
Nothing.
No, thanks.
I really appreciate your time and we'll be back. Peter, thank you.
The next item that you'll see on your agenda. For the proposed review shop, would be one that's been taken off the agenda that we request the applicant. So we'll move on to the last agenda item, which is for property at 6260 South Bay Road and building addition. Welcome back.
Hello, I'm Carrie Horse, Landscape Architecture. We were in front of you a month ago. And that's not the current.
Yeah, I just realized I was just gonna look here.
And we submitted addressing from the comments that were brought up at the previous meeting. We added, we changed the dumpster enclosure from wood to a composite vinyl fencing. And then we also added some more landscaping, as you see there. There are some large trees. We have a variety of, for the most part, native plants, white oak, Norway spruce, sugar maple, and a red maple. And then we have a little island in the front, though we're not proposing a new sign. We wanted to, this area here, it was brought up to have maybe a little landscape area that would represent what a sign would be. So I did add a little landscape area. We have some large folders in there, a variety of plants, just something decorative. Since we're not proposing a sign, the sign is an existing sign right here on the building. That is going to stay. It'll be the only sign that they have. We did include building elevations that were requested, along as lighting catalog cuts. So the new lighting, they just have wall caps on their building, and we're just proposing 2 on either side of this and nothing under the light. We received comments from the engineer, and we addressed those as well.
Mrs. Horton.
I appreciate you adding more landscaping in to keep it all native. I appreciate you hearing our concerns on that. I don't have any questions right now.
Thank you. Mr. Abbott?
I'm all set as up.
Mr. Snyder? I'm good. The boss?
I'm all set.
Are we all set with the county's condition?
Yes, they,
Drainage report?
well, we didn't do a drainage report since we're reducing the amount of asphalt.
The water requirement.
That wasn't required. We're not doing anything in there right away. So there's no permit for reducing fire.
I'm all set then. Steve? I'm set, thank you.
Good.
Yep, all set, thank you.
We're good for moving forward.
I believe so.
I'll make a standard for a motion for our standard secret. Do I have a second? Second. Mrs. Hogan.
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Snyder. Yes. Mr. Boss.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Robert, can you propose a motion for approval?
Not sure what the total application is, but the board's going to move the adoption of a resolution to approve the proposal. Is for 7,800 plus or minus square foot building addition pursuant to the plans. You say it's in substantial compliance with Exhibit A, and we'll mark the plans Exhibit A.
Would somebody like to make that motion? For a second? Second. Mrs. Hogan. Mr. Abbott.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder. Yes. Mr. Block.
Yeah.
And I vote yes. Well done.
We have a final set of plans.
That concludes our agenda items. Is there any questions, comments from anybody on the team? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.